So welcome back. We're going to talk about conflict communication in this setting, this term, which is the second unit module that we're getting taped today. So conflict communication. Communication, as we talked about in the first presentation, is complicated enough. But once we get into a conflict, communication gets even harder. So I'm surprised in all the dynamics that happens in just ordinary communication. We've got gender issues, we've got age issues, we've got race or ethnic issues, all standing in the way of communication. I'm amazed we can communicate at all. While I'm speaking English and we're all talking that same language, there are still many different languages taking place in this room right now. Right? So the chances of being misunderstood or the chances of miscommunication are at least 50% in those settings. So it's just a miracle when we do communicate. As soon as you throw conflict into the mix, those percentages get even worse. I see three dynamics generate whenever someone drops into a conflict setting. Now, all three don't have to be here. So it's not like, well, it's only a conflict communication when you've got, 50% of the, no. Any one of these can be present to constitute a conflict communication. And what you're going to hear me do is first, second, third, that's just presenter lingo. It doesn't necessarily mean they fall in any order whatsoever. So don't get caught up in my poor language structures. But these are the three dynamics that I see happen when people drop into a communication. Any one of them can be there. More often than not, I end up seeing all three. But that may just be the context I find myself in. The first one, person becomes a problem. Second one, an imbalanced personal state. Third one, single solution mindset. We're going to talk about each of these. Let's talk about person is the problem and describe it. We talked about earlier that one of the dangers in that first presentation when we talked about asking probing questions is that understanding trap. When the person becomes the problem, we more than likely drop into that trap where I am trying to change that other person's understanding. And the myth is that if we just had mutual understanding, this conflict would go away. But watch how this really plays out. Let me give you an example of what happened in my house. In my house, something would happen and I would end up dropping into person is the problem with just this simple statement. You're not listening to me. Now notice, I don't have to be vehement. I don't have to have a raised voice. There's not a great deal of emotion in that. I'm not angry. I'm just drawing a fact out and identifying you're not listening to me. But here's the full translation of that. You're not listening to me because if you were listening to me, you would hear the logic of my argument, feel the weight of my evidence, and agree with me. You don't agree with me, so obviously you're not listening. See, I've made her the problem. Now, if we can just fix her, the problem goes away. So we automatically shift into trying to change someone's understanding, and that's what fuels that understanding trap. I see this technique, this effort, this goal, happen with these two techniques. Arguing facts, arguing values. Let's talk about facts for a few minutes. Arguing facts. The whole idea is we end up arguing a different past fact scenario. How do you understand the situation? Oh, that's what you don't know. That's not what happened. Let me explain what really happened. And now I'm offering an alternative set of facts opposed to your set of facts. And now our facts are fighting each other. We have this elevated understanding thinking that facts resolve conflicts. And as soon as we could actually get the actual facts out on the table, this would all be clear. That can't be further from the truth. The place that facts play in our society is in order to create a judgment. That's where I told you we were going to go next in terms of that. Now, sometimes I go into this, sometimes I don't. The only reason I'm going into this is because the connection from the first module. So you don't have to necessarily go into this much detail. Facts work like in a court system. Courts are constantly concerned with the facts. And you know, the old dragnet thing, nothing but the facts, ma'am. Facts lead to the truth, and we think the truth will resolve conflict. My experience is the truth doesn't resolve conflicts. It only creates defensive parties in that room. So even if I could convince her, my wife, that she was wrong, how much closer am I to resolving?
Further.
Yeah,
Further.
exactly. Yeah. Well, good. I'm glad to see you finally admit your mistake. Now, can we resolve? No, I'm sleeping in a couch tonight. That's not going to work. The reason facts become important is because someone has to make a judgment. Now, how that works is typically in our court systems, judges want to know the facts. They get as close to the facts as they possibly can because they have to make a judgment. We don't have to in conflict resolution. Our role is not to create a judgment, not to come up with a judgment. And what a judgment does is says who's right and who's wrong. We don't need that here. That's not helpful. I don't even need to head in that direction. But most people believe that the facts will settle everything. Truth will lead to mutual understanding, and by doing this, we end up pounding the facts in order to try and change this other person's behavior, feelings, or thinking. What, you're mad at me for that? Well, if you only understood the circumstances, you wouldn't be mad at me, right? So facts end up exasperating this. I don't need to be involved in the facts. It's not going to get us anywhere. It's just another version of making the other person the problem. The second thing I see happening is arguing values. This one I really like. What you're going to hear isn't the facts, but what's really important in this culture context. For example, in a family setting, it's between, let's say, a husband and a wife, and they are arguing with each other. One's going to throw out the value of that community context, for in this case, the kids. Well, if you really cared about the kids, right? Or they'll come back and say, well, if you cared about the family, you wouldn't spend so much time right? Whatever they're trying to change in terms of behavior or thinking or feelings. Or here's the other one, in any personal relationship, even without kids, well, if you really cared about me, you don't care about us. You spend more time out with the guys, right? So these become the values. Every time this happens, and these three things can become value statements as well. There's not enough time. Corporations use that all the time. We don't have enough time to spend on that. That's diverting way too much energy. You need to change your position on this because this is taking way too much, right? Those kind of values start to come up. The emotion, this always leads to a character revelation. Oh, now I understand. Okay, I see what's going on here. Now watch, the character revelation becomes this insight into that person's motivation. I've tried to talk to you about the facts, and any logical person would have come to this conclusion, but you're not logical. You're not being reasonable. You're an evil person. All those become character revelation. The reason you're doing this, and here become some of our favorite options, the reason you're doing this is you're just being completely unreasonable. You're mean, or this one, you're out to get me. A normal person wouldn't be doing this. Why are you resisting the obvious? There's some insidious motive. Now, as soon as I get this revelation about this person, and this is now the only explanation I can have for why this person would be this difficult, I now have permission to punish this person. Because unreasonable people deserve punishment. Mean people deserve punishment.
Did you disagree with this?
Well, the problem with that is this is all dehumanizing. An evil person deserves, right? And now it becomes permission to punish. And punishment, we have various forms of punishment. Isolation, silence, rejection, gossip, setting somebody up in the workplace so that they're going to fail. There's all sorts of promoting. Promoting is another good way to punish folks. Oh, we're going to give you a new assignment. Here it is. You're gonna love this one.
Problem out.
Yeah, we're going to promote it out, which is one of the reasons the government is having so much problem. They tend to promote their problems to somebody else. I don't know if they do in the military. Do they do that in the military? What? So not only does the person become a problem, but now we understand the motivation behind this problem, and now I have permission to punish, and it almost becomes this righteous crusade. Watch how this, you'll hear this start to happen. If they keep this up, if somebody doesn't do something, they're going to... And here's what I've learned about punishment very recently in some of the conflicts, lawsuits I've been involved in, that in any punishment setting, punishment and lesson learning go hand in hand. There's nothing about punishment that doesn't have its own satisfaction if there's not a lesson that's learned. You know, it's not satisfying for someone to go, you know, well, one day they're going to get their due. Well, that's not helping me. I want them to get their due because of what they did to me, and I want them to know about it. See how that goes? I want them to learn their lesson. Well, how will you know that they've learned their lesson? When I see them suffer, and they see me gloating, right? There's usually some association. Yes, yes. It's very hard to pull punishment and pedagogy away from each other. There's some lesson learned. So that tends to be the outcome, inevitably, whether you're arguing facts or you're arguing values, some sort of character revelation. One of the things we're looking for with changing this when we do the military is we'll probably add the unit, the company, the whatever best language we need for that military. And we'll get that from Mike or one of the board members to add to that. You had a question, Maureen?
Just a comment that punishment is attached to a lesson learned. I mean, that is the philosophy, isn't it, of military life? That
Well,
if you don't, that's the consequence piece. That's how do you convince them that this isn't an okay thing to do?
well, what we have actually is the military does not accept punishment as a corrective institute, believe it or not.
Well,
Per
And
se.
I'm not saying, yeah,
Per
but
se.
I'm not saying punishment as 30 whips, in
Right,
the
no.
stockade. I'm saying sabotage and all those.
Yeah. No. What we like to do, especially for minor discrepancies, is we call it extra military instruction. Because obviously, at some point in time, you missed the instruction that told you not to do something. Hence, be late for watch. Hence, whatever that is. So we're going to assist you in learning this. One of the ways that I found entertaining for extra military instruction was that you got to show up to every watch 15 minutes early, and then you had to report in, or even the better one is you had to report in every hour to some location, to some person.
But my question is, how do we convince this group that has been fed on this and rewarded or not that this is not an appropriate action to take in terms of results in a mediation or conflict management?
Well, you got to give them something else that works.
That's where we get it.
Oh, is that where you're heading?
We're not saying change this behavior. What this module is about is describing the behavior they do now. They'll recognize themselves almost immediately. Now, the next question is, well, what's wrong with that? I'm going to give you a more productive. I'm not going to tell you not to do this. I'm going to give you a way around it.
And just another piece, just from a woman's perspective.
Okay.
And somebody who's listened to a lot of people talk about being abused, is that the lesson. I mean, what the women say who are in physical abusive or emotional abusive or
Right.
sexually abusive environments is that the punishment they get from the aggressor is that I have to teach you the way I want you to be or the way you should be because
Right.
you're not good enough. So, I just hope that they can get there.
Right.
That's a behavior that's being used in the domestic abuse situation of them returning from combat.
Yeah. And the domestic violence is even more insidious. It's, I'm doing this for your own good.
Yeah.
Again, that's the pedagogy piece, that if I wasn't doing this, you would be worse off
Yeah.
if I didn't do this. And of course, that's unimaginable in a domestic
Yeah,
violence.
it's all you.
Yeah, it's your fault. Yeah.
Yeah, it's your fault, and I'm doing this for you. And one day you'll, at some point we got to show, A, that's not only not productive. B, you're the person who's doing this isn't productive. Let's just leave it at that, since we're on tape.
Oh, I'm sorry.
No, that's okay. I just got to
You can
be.
also bleep it out.
No, well, be careful what I end up saying.
Oh.
Yeah. All right, does that help? Now, you don't have to go into that much energy. Like I said, most of it, they understand what we're talking about with tendency to punish. Rudy, thoughts? Marlene, thoughts? All right, here we go. There are only 4 techniques available. If I'm going to try and change someone's mind, someone's behavior, someone's feelings, and I drop into persuasion, there are only 4 techniques available in persuasion. Most Americans, I can't speak for all cultures, but I know my culture very well, and American culture, we don't understand the difference between negotiation and persuasion. Now, this can be a launching off point at some point later where we can pull this back in when we start talking about negotiation skills. But with this one day, we don't actually get that deep into the negotiation side. Persuasion skills, they don't understand. They think they're negotiating when really all they're doing is practicing persuasion. 4 techniques, and people run out of them very, very quickly. The 4 techniques are these. Threat. I will threaten you to change your thoughts, feelings, or behavior. I will punish you, and that's back to the person is the problem, to try and get you to change your thoughts, your feelings, your behavior. I will shame you, or I will guilt you. Does anybody have parents in the room? Everybody, parents? You have parents, they're just not alive, right?
Oh,
Yeah. Well, if you had parents, then you know what shame and guilt feels like, right? Because it works, and we often produce that. My father is one of those. I'll be on the phone with him, and when you coming up, you never come and visit. You know that stereotype that you get from your mom? You never call. My dad does that. It's like, oh, God, I always have to hang up with this guilt feeling, right, that he's got to produce. If you cared about me, a decent person would. Those are all prefaces to shame or guilt, where I'm trying to guilt this person into doing something I want them to do. Only 4 techniques. When these run out, here's what I see. They do the exact same thing, only louder. They'll just reassert another threat, only louder. They'll do more punishment, only louder. They'll do more shame, more guilt, only louder. These are not effective techniques. They run out of power and run out of steam very, very quickly. So we need to find another way to get around the person is the problem. We'll talk about that in just a minute. Imbalanced personal state. This is the second thing I see happening. And there I am, that second thing, first, second, third. It's just the second in the line of presentation. We all operate out of a balance between our emotions and our intellect. This is a normal, healthy human being. Somebody who's balanced will look like this. They'll have this emotional side, intellectual side, both feeding their decision-making process. The problem is in conflict, someone typically overemphasizes one side or the other. Now, I don't know who you are, but me, personally, when I drop into a conflict, I have a tendency to overemphasize my intellectual side. I drop into my mind, disconnect myself from my emotions, and become, well, for this, I'll call it intellectual overdrive. Another way to talk about this is super rational. I'm going to be very rational on this. So if you think of this little diagram as, say, a basketball cut in half, or a pipe that you're looking at a cross-section of down the center of it. And right in the middle of that is let's call it a flexible diaphragm in that middle section. As long as everything's normal, calm, cool, collected, there's a balance, equal space on the top and the bottom of that diaphragm. Conflict comes up and pressure builds up on one side or the other. One side or the other. Mine builds up on the intellectual side. That pressure builds, and it squeezes out that emotional voice. I become disconnected from myself and less sensitive to the connections around me because I'm stuck in my head. Okay? Now, someone else in the room may have that pressure build up on the emotional side. They have a tendency then to overemphasize and be in emotional overdrive so that the intellectual voice starts to weaken, soften, barely being heard because the emotions are overriding the intellect. Here's one of the problems with this whole scenario that we have to address, not just in the classroom, but in our culture. We have a white Western bias for the intellectual side in this culture. We have a tendency to believe that reason and rationality will save us. Here's how this sounds. And when we get into a conflict, then we think that the rational way is the way to resolution. So what someone will actually say, in every book I've ever read, in every academic setting, and all the research I've ever done, has a tendency to demonize the emotional side. It's like, whoa, this is anathema. If we could just separate ourselves out of that emotional response, then indeed reason would see us through. That is wrong. The problem isn't the emotions in any conflict. The problem is the imbalanced personal state. There is nothing wrong with our emotions. Emotional overdrive is a problem. We stereotype this from a gender perspective. We have sometimes, you'll hear it's the women that become all emotional, right? And we have to stop this. In fact, they'll even use this as a way to create those glass ceilings or create those limitations on women in our society and our culture. And I was best illustrated 4 years ago when Hillary Clinton was running for president and the entire nation was in a frenzy as to whether or not Hillary Clinton cried. Do you remember that? Oh my gosh, it was everywhere, on every news. Every comedian had a shtick on, right, this whole thing. Oh my God, well, do we want a president who's cold, right? And it was and we were struggling with, do we want our women leading? Do we want, can we have rational, it was a mess. Here's what we need to do. We need to get past this cultural bias. There's nothing wrong with the emotions. The emotions supply 50% of your data source to any good decision. When I step into a conflict and I over-rationalize, I am cutting myself off from that emotional side, and that's the problem. If we're going to play out the stereotype, here's how it looks. I got an employee that comes into the office, or I'm a soldier and I'm coming up to my commander, and walk into that room all upset, frustrated, emotionally imbalanced. And then finally the leader steps up behind the desk and says, we'll have this conversation as soon as you calm down. Now, stereotypically, when I tell this story, most people automatically imagine that the person who's agitated is a woman and the person who's calm, cool, and collected is a man. Here's what's actually happening in that situation if we get past the gender. I've got an emotionally imbalanced person in the midst of a conflict walking in and talking to an intellectually imbalanced person. They're both in no condition to make a decision at this point in time. Both are a problem. And here's why. The result of the imbalance means I have cut myself off from half of myself. If this is a natural, normal, healthy condition, then any imbalance is a threat to my health. Psychologically, emotionally, physically. Let me dramatize it this way. There is no way on this planet I am going to be able to make a decision that in any way takes into consideration my connection to you if I am disconnected from myself. I cannot make a quality decision in that imbalanced personal state. I don't care which side you're on. Both of them are dangerous. Both of them are unhealthy. However, which one do we reward in our culture? We have a tendency to reward those people cut off from themselves from the neck up. Or I guess neck down, cut off from the neck down. They only reside in the neck up. And then we wonder why we're in so much mess. I do not want, and you should not want, anybody making a decision in an imbalanced personal state. And yet that's one of the characteristics of conflict communication. I will show you how to get around this in just a moment. Ready? Go ahead. Maureen?
Oh, I'm sorry. I think what you just said was so impactful, and I'm just trying to get it all down. I know it's on tape, but
Yeah.
I think I just need to digest it for a second.
Yeah.
State the statement again about any disconnection is a disconnect from myself.
There's no way on this planet I'm going to be able to make a connection that is at all sensitive to my connection to you or anybody else around me if I'm disconnected from myself. Fundamentally, I am making a decision that's based on disconnection. 50% of my data source. Here's another hyperbole way to say this. It is no wonder a white male culture is so good at oppressing others when we've mastered it on ourselves for so long. I went 35 years, 25 years. I went 35 years without a feeling vocabulary. Completely. I got bachelor's, 2 master's degree, PhD. I mean, there's no room for the emotional side in the academic universe. I mean, I would very quickly be punished for doing that. I would be put in my place in that culture for being over. You don't do research papers with emotion. Doesn't happen. No, I learned this very, very well. And I got rewarded quite a lot for this. So you can imagine the impact it had on my professional and my personal life.
You got rewarded doctor.
I got moved up. I got promoted.
They punished you by promotion.
Yeah, really. Yeah. Just sidebar here for the trainers. I can't tell you the number of times, but especially in a corporate setting, where at this point in time, I'll actually have, during a break, some of the women in the room come up and go, "You mean emotions are okay?" It's like, really? That's, I've never heard, that's not accepted, right? And yes, it's okay. In fact, it's the overdrive that's the problem. We also have another issue here. You got minority cultures that are in better touch with their emotions and have a natural tendency to express themselves that way. And the dominant culture shuts them down and criticizes them, and that's not acceptable. And it's just another way to press.
And it's not just a racial difference, it's also an ethnic kind of
Precisely.
cultural, Italian and Mediterranean people are much more touchy-feely emotional
Precisely.
than Asian cultures, et cetera, et cetera.
Yes.
What are you laughing at?
Go for it, Rudy. Go for it.
Go, go, go.
As the only black man in the room.
Socially conscious.
Yes, yes.
Doing the things that they've been doing in this country all along. Medical things, nursing things, caring for the sick, having the audacity to suggest that perhaps women ought to be ordained, and the gender inequality within the church that manifests itself over the last 2,000-3,000 years.
Put them in their place.
Yeah. So Vatican's now investigating the American nuns.
You ought to be investigating the priests in a good place.
Hey, 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 hey.
Can you make that out of
Hey, hey, hey. No.
In the defense of the Catholic, if you look at the number of priests, because I hear
You're
this
not
a
gonna
lot.
defend that.
No, I'm defending it this way. If you look at the number of priests that have committed these kind of crimes, and all different levels of crimes, and even the number of women who are nuns who have had problems with certain things, and then you look at the other Christian, if you combine all the other Christian organizations, the Vatican and the priest level is less than 1% of the offenders of the entire religious level.
Organized religion.
Yeah.
Organized.
If you do a full measurement, but because the Vatican is one church, the Catholic Church, it stands for Universal Church. All of them are counted together, so it makes it, extremely high and a lot more. Oh, we know exactly what you're doing. And I compare it to Americans. We are so vast. We have states that are bigger than most European countries. So when you look at the Europeans and they go, well, look at all these Americans, they cannot understand the same, they can't make that same connection. And I'm not defending, they deserve to be punished and everything else. Permission to punish has been granted.
Can we go back a chapter or two?
There is reasons that they need to go and have psychological therapy and stuff like that. Working in a prison that specializes in those type of people, there is something wrong. There is something that needs to be fixed. Maybe fixed is the wrong term, but
It's a human issue. It's
Yes.
not a Catholic, Jewish, Protestant,
Right.
whatever. It is a human condition.
it really is. And so, to the point, going back to
Go ahead.
disconnected from self.
Yeah.
A lot of times we try to disconnect problems. The Catholic Church is having a problem. Well, no, this problem is not just isolated in the Catholic Church. This is a problem that everybody needs to be dealing with. Everybody should be made aware of. Not just made aware because, I've been put in a predicament, now I can know. And the more that we become aware and the more we become active in knowing, just like with conflict, bringing that knowledge about and making it more common and more accepted as in, okay, I now know what these people might, fall into, or categories or stereotypes or whatever else. Or I know how to protect my children or myself from these situations, and I'm not afraid to engage in a conflict. I'm not afraid to engage in this
Because it's important.
because it's important.
Something worth fighting for.
Yeah, and that it is supposed to be important. It is supposed to be fought for. It builds. This has so many more implications out upon itself.
So this point right here has many, as we've just illustrated, social, political implications that you can pull out if you want. Notice that the risk can, the conversation might get in a place, in a direction you don't necessarily need it to go. But the same kind of wow that you had, how far you go with it, you're going to have to, I'm counting on you as experienced trainers to read that audience and know how far to take it.
Yeah.
I took it really far here with you because of my connection.
Most audiences, the religious political direction is probably not where you want to go.
Right.
at all.
No, it's a
Right.
hot potato. We don't
Exactly.
have time for it.
Exactly. But you're aware of the implications here. You know what you're saying, even if you're not completely saying it. And then if depends on the reaction you get, maybe a little farther, maybe not.
I think, just one quick thing. I think that as we do train the trainer,
Mhm.
that letting them know that don't get hooked on some of these religious statements.
Right.
You cannot get hooked on people's biases because they don't know what they don't know.
Right.
It's a matter of
Right.
enlightening and opening it up.
Yeah. So I would have stopped where it was, except you made that. So because of the connection I have with you, I went really far.
Okay.
Don't necessarily do that in every. Yeah.
Okay.
Got it.
Sorry, I'll keep on.
No, this is loaded. This is huge for our culture. This is a huge bias, gender and ethnic bias that we really need to where it's almost a campaign. This over-rationalization can be very, 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 very
Political campaign.
detrimental. Yes. Third one, single solution mindset. Nobody comes to a conflict without a solution in mind. Most people think, as conflict managers, well, we have to help these people figure this out. If we could just come up with a solution. No, that's not the problem. The problem is they can't come up with a solution. The problem is they both have a solution that they don't agree with. Everybody comes to a conflict with some solution in mind. They know the intimate details of this case. They know what happened. The scales of justice are imbalanced, and they know exactly what it would take to balance these scales. And consequently, they come to the conflict with, well, here's what you need to do. Okay? The problem is the other person's not willing to do it. Now we have a problem. No, I'm not going to do that. Well, you should. Why should I do that? Well, if you were a reasonable person, right, somebody who cared about me would. And now we're into the facts and into the value arguing. This single solution mindset sets people up in a confrontation that creates my way or the highway. There are no alternatives or options available or even offered. And that creates stalemate. So people get, and this is what we call, we can talk about this more later, but entrenched in their position. All right? So what do we need to do? The result then is people just start arguing back and forth their own single solution, and it always creates a yes or no choice. Are you going to reimburse me for, no, I'm not. Right? I only have one solution. I got to know. Now what am I going to do? Well, usually what they do is louder. Right? Or make the threat a little greater. Well, I'm going to sue you. Right? And it's just the threat of suing me. Thinking that that's going to change my feelings, my thoughts, or my behavior. We need to find a way to get around this. Conflict communication with any three of these, but all three of these together, most often than not, create these characteristics. People get stuck in the past because past facts are fundamentally about the past. You can't have a future fact. We don't talk like that, right? A fact is something that happened. So now they're arguing in the past, they're stuck in the past. We end up with character attacks. Oh, you're just like your mother. Right? And whatever negative characteristic that represents, that becomes permission to punish. The argument becomes circular. We're just going to go round and around and around because we don't know a way out. The person is the problem. I'm in an imbalanced personal state that keeps fueling itself because you're being unreasonable. And then the third one, single solution mindset, right? You need to do that. And that creates those entrenched positions. We need a way to get around all three of these. I will show you how to do that. The first one, how do I get out of this imbalanced personal state? When a pressure is built up on one side or the other, I need a healthy mechanism that will allow the release of that pressure from whatever side of that sphere is overloaded. So if I'm on the intellectual side, I need to pierce that bubble a little bit and let that air out. A slow bleed, if you will. Or if it's the emotional side, let that out. Build that, let that pressure go. We call this venting. There are healthy ways to vent. There are unhealthy ways to vent. Most people have this tendency to drop into unhealthy venting where they're throwing things, ranting, raving, inappropriate adult behavior. So if I'm going to create this healthy venting process, I need a way to keep you talking so that you can get this off your chest and out of your system so that we can get back into balance where I want you making a decision. I never want anyone making a decision in an imbalanced personal state. Now, the way to do that, remember those 5 techniques I taught you before lunch? Those 5 techniques are your communication skills. What was the goal of the communication skills? Do you remember? What is the goal of the communication skills in conflict management? Keep that door open. That's what I'm doing. I'm letting this person vent. I'm not slamming that door. I'm letting them get this off their chest. And when they get that venting done, whether it's intellectual or emotional. Now, we all have a stereotype of what the emotional venting looks like. But if you'll think back, I'm sure you can identify some of those places where someone was over-rational and needed to get back into a balanced personal state. Venting does that as well. Okay? So my communication skills, my 5 techniques, keep you talking. I got to keep you present. I got to keep you in this room. Now, do not hear at this point that it is your job as a conflict manager in the middle of a conflict to put yourself in a context of verbal abuse. That is not what we're saying. These skills are not designed to get you through or put you in a context where you are supposed to stay there and be verbally abused, psychologically abused, emotionally abused. None of that is acceptable. The technique for that is to leave the room. Remove yourself. Demonstrating. Protect yourself. Do not hear that you should stay there and take it. That is not what I'm saying. In a context of adults, heated discussion, okay. No verbal abuse, loud, okay. Emotionally charged, okay. We can be adults and responsible and passionate at the same time. In those things, then yes, I can apply these techniques to create that venting process. But I need that over-intellectual person to get back connected to their balanced personal state. What I used to do, one of the things would walk the dog. I would walk that dog sometimes far longer than that dog wanted to be walked. And that was my effort to get out there, and you go through it all in your head and you mumble, as you're walking around, and the dog doesn't want to hear anymore. It's heard it 10 times, right? But that's what I needed to get back to be able to coming back to the house. Okay, I'm ready to talk. I'm ready to talk about the next thing now. Okay. We all have some awareness of what it takes for us personally to get back into this state and how long it takes to get back into that state. So continue to do that. That's part of your healthy venting process. Recognize that you can help facilitate someone through that process with some good skills. All right? Any questions about your communication skills in balanced personal state? The other 2 communication skills will not work to get around. You can't talk through somebody who sees you as the problem. That's just not going to work. You can't talk through somebody who is stuck on a single solution. I have to have other skills to do that. The best way to get around those 2 is to apply need exploration. Need exploration we're going to show you in the next presentation. Right? How to get around these. I don't have to stop it. I don't have to tell them what you're doing right now is you're making me the problem, and you realize you're not very good at it. None of that's going to help. I have to get around these things. Need exploration will do it. Let me illustrate and introduce to you need exploration. And here's how we do it. A classic story in our industry of conflict management. You got 1 orange, 2 kids, conflict. What do you do? And everybody say, Maureen, what do you do?
I'm sorry, I was busy.
One orange, 2 kids, conflict. What do you do?
Hear both sides.
There you go. Good job. Yes. Now, in your audience, what you're going to get 99.9% of the time, but you all are in this industry and heard this story 100 times, is, and you've already heard this story, right, Marlene?
No, but I would say peel the orange and split it.
Peel the orange and split. Why not just split it with the peel on?
It's kind of hard to do that unless you have a knife.
No, cut it in half. 99.9%, 999% of your audience is going to say, cut the orange in half.
Solomon's solution.
Yes, cut that sucker right in half, right? Give each kid half. The problem is you are solving a problem that doesn't exist. Now, here's the learning point. We are excellent problem solvers in this culture. We don't need to be teaching anybody in this room problem-solving skills. What we are terrible at is need exploration. We do not know how to do need exploration. Consequently, it is not modeled for us on television. It is not taught to us in schools. We don't have this taught and picked up from our parents or from other adults around us. We have no access to this skill. It's the #1 skill missing in conflict management across the board today. What people do, cutting the orange in half, they think we have a resource problem. We don't have enough resources to go around. I got 2 kids, I got 1 orange, limited resources, let's cut it in half, blah, blah, blah. There you go. The danger of solving a problem that doesn't exist is evident when the two children, this is a true story, one child took the orange, peeled it, ate the inside, threw the peel away. The other child took the orange, peeled it, threw the inside away, and used the peel for a science project. Had we done a little bit of need exploration, we might have been able to meet both child's need. It wasn't a resource problem at all. One would have gotten the whole orange inside, one would have gotten the whole peel. So let's rewind the video now. We're going to start over. We already know what the future behavior of the children are. Let's rewind it and play it again. I now have one orange, two kids, conflict. What do? We end up with Maureen's comment. We do a little exploration. How are you going to explore that, Maureen? What technique are you going to bring to this exploration?
Probably some probing.
Yeah, we're going to ask questions. Number one skill for a need explorer is 1,000 questions. I've got to ask a bunch of questions, right? So here's one question I found that never works. You're free to try this, but in my 20 years of experience of doing this, this question never works. What do you need? Now, we are so bad at need exploration in this culture. Not only has it not been modeled, not only do I know how to do it on the people around me, my children, I don't know how to do it on myself. Now think about it. If I turn to either one of those two kids, and honey, come on, tell me what it is you need, what's that child going to say? I need the orange. Every single time. He doesn't, she does not know what they need. It's my job as an expert to be able to discover the need, sometimes even over against their own ability. So what do you need doesn't work. We're going to get into this more often, but once I figure out what the need is, we're into conflict management secret number 3. There is always, always, always. I know you're not supposed to use those kinds of words, and my counselor keeps, don't use never, and don't talk about always, right? There's always more than one way to meet a need. Now think about this. What do you think the child's need was who ate the inside of the orange? Hunger. Hunger. We'll go with the first answer I heard. We'll get to you in a minute. Nutrition, hunger, right? How many different ways are there to meet that child's hunger need that doesn't include that orange at all? Thousands. Honey.
On your cupboard.
Yeah. Go to the kitchen. You can have anything you want. You know, I just baked a chocolate cake. It's yours. You can have it. You don't even have to share it with your brother or sister. You can have the whole thing. There is always, once I figure out what the need is, there is always more than one way. We've just gotten around single solution mindset.
You know, speaking of the chocolate cake, off subject, but
Yes.
I did just watch that Bill Cosby skit on that breakfast. It has eggs. It has milk. It has
Yes, chocolate cake. It's
You gave the kids chocolate cake
for breakfast, yes.
One of my favorites. I just happened to watch that the other day.
Excellent.
I'll keep that in mind.
Now think about this from a conflict management point of view. I've got two people that's come to this conflict with a single solution in mind. They've both said no to each other's solution. I've done need exploration, and I know there is always more than one. And what I teach all of my conflict managers, there are 10 ways to meet any one need. There are 10. All you have to do is brainstorm and figure out what those 10 are. If there are 10 ways to solve this child's hunger need, I've now exponentially increased my ability to resolve this conflict, or our ability to resolve this conflict, by 10. But watch this. That other child also has a need. Guess how many ways there's going to be to meet that child's need? 10. I've now exponentially increased the chances of resolving this conflict by 20. Where we came in with no, well, and I can't tell you the number of times, and Rudy, I know you've had this experience. Everybody comes into a mediation, well, this will never settle, right? Because they're stuck on their single solutions. By the time a good mediator or a good conflict manager is done, there's more choices here than they ever imagined. Now, are they good choices? Not necessarily. Are they viable choices for that person given the context of their life? No, maybe not. But I can guarantee there's more than one that could turn out to be a good possibility than the one they had. That's what we do with conflict management. The need exploration is that turning point to be able to find out what it is you really need. And I have to find out when you can't tell me what it is you really need. What do you think the need of as a child that took the appeal for the science project?
He needed something for the science project.
Well, yeah, I needed a tool for the science project. Well, why would they need that? What are they trying to get? What's that person's need?
Probably doing the display of the solar system, he needed a circle.
A circular, right? So what often I'll, the sun, yeah, so some orange planet. Oh, yes, I need that orange.
Or he was planting a garden,
I,
who knows?
who knows what the science project was? Here's what I'll often get from my audience, and I'm suspecting there's a good chance you'll get this from your audience too. What they'll answer is they need a good grade. They need a good grade on the science project. Grades are not human needs. There's not a human on the planet that needs a grade. What we're talking about when we're talking about grades are basic human needs. That's what motivates that engagement to fight. That engagement to step into a conflict is some basic human need is at risk here of not being addressed. Grades, I do this with my students all the time. Oh, I didn't turn in the assignment, can I get a chance to give you another grade? Why? What is it you need? I need an A in this course. No, you don't. You don't need an A in this course. Human beings have lived for centuries without A's. Plenty of people live without A's. You don't need an A. What is it you need? And if I do need exploration on them, it ends up they're doing all this to get a job, to create security, so that they can create an income for their family, so they can be the thing mother always wanted them to be, right? Or father. I mean, different answers, and everybody's needs going to be different given that context, but it's not. So, now, sidebar here. Well, there's two ways to address this at this point. Mike wants me to go in one particular way, which means we're going to give you supplements to address this eventually. When I talk about basic human needs, what do you all think about?
Yes, Mike does want those more.
Yes, yeah, I know. Food, clothing, shelter. And who gave us those? That Maslow. Maslow's hierarchy of needs. Now, a little sidebar here. This will work, okay, if you don't look at it in a hierarchy. I don't think when I look at Maslow's research, he was making a social political statement about other cultures and our responsibility. So he put them in a hierarchy. Basic human needs aren't hierarchical. We either need them or we don't.
But he built the self-actualization on them.
Yes. Which ones should we address first, he's talking about, but we have all of these. All of these are our needs. So it works better if you'll think about any of them. Okay, all of them. So basic human needs, you can use any list you want to approach this in any setting. Is this person in this conflict for self-actualization? Are they for recognition? Are they in it for valuation or belonging? Are they in it for safety? Are they in it for food, clothing, shelter? Those will all work. Yes, sir.
Did you give him your 4 basic needs?
I'm going to do that next.
Okay. I had something come up. I got it wrong.
Okay.
Not super bad, but
Bad enough to go.
yeah.
And I will see you.
Tomorrow?
Okay.
Class tomorrow?
Call me. I have class tonight.
Oh, yeah, class time. How about, just call me when you're out of here and I'll see if I'm free.
Okay, we'll do it.
Hi. It's been a pleasure. Thank you so much.
I'm going to leave this here for, well, not these, my best tools.
You need this for the meeting?
No.
Now, when I present this, in fact, this happened to me again when we were doing this for the sales team. Somebody in that room has an opinion about what counts as a human need or not, and rather than get into any kind of an argument, I don't care what list you use. If you will think in terms of, why is this person fighting for an orange? It has nothing to do with that orange. It's what that orange will do for them. And what that doing does is affected by this list of human needs. If you're thinking about this in the back of your mind, it doesn't matter which one you pick. In fact, this never actually has to be verbalized. Okay? Just recognize the link between this and this. The orange is one way to get that need met. There are 9 others for getting that exact same need met. So if you work from the point of view of that need, it doesn't matter which list you use. And this is the sidebar, Mike wants me to do this, and he wants me to do it for the military workbook. I've developed my own list of basic human needs, and he likes it. He likes it a lot. So I'll just leave it at that and talk about it. I think people are motivated out of there are only 4 basic human needs. Every human being needs to be connected. There's 4 things a human being needs to be connected to. Every human being needs to be connected to a community. We do this very poorly in the West. We don't understand community very well in the West. The one thing that ties us together as a community in the West is our individualism. There are plenty of cultures, minority cultures, and other cultures out there that do a much better job at understanding what community is. So there we go. There's first need, community. Second, every human being needs to be connected to a cause. C-A-U-S-E. Some sort of cause. Something bigger than themselves. Something they can contribute to that will outlast them. Okay? Third, every human being needs to be connected to their self. That's why therapy exists. That's why counseling, all the therapeutic industry, trying to get connected to self. And every human being needs to be connected to another. Those are my basic human needs. And I think every conflict can be associated to one of these is some expression behaviorally, emotionally, psychologically to the loss or endangerment of one of these 4 needs. When you talk about being valued, talk about belonging, when you talk about safety, when you talk about what's really fascinating, and this is what attracts me to this intellectually, again, this is all sidebar, you never have to go into this, is if you pair these things up, the kind of consequences that happen if these 2 are not balanced well. Enmeshment, right? Kind of poor boundaries. The kind of things that get into problems when these 2, if I take this one and try and substitute for this one, I end up with classic illustration gangs. Classic illustration skinheads, right? I've dedicated myself to a cause, but I've tried to fill my community need with that, and therefore I'm willing to follow the rules of the gang, follow the rules. Vice versa, right? If I become too attached to this community, then I look at my community as my cause, you end up with nationalism, fascism. I mean, there's just so many fascinating implications. If I I got grandiosity here, if I'm only connected to myself and not connected to another. I've got enmeshment if I only connect to another and not connected to there's so many different fascinating possibilities if the need isn't balanced between all 4. So Mike wants me to play with that more. I mean, this kind of detail you don't need, but I have a list I've been working on where what are the things you hear at that table with someone who's missing, concerned about their community connection. What language are they going to use? What kind of language are they going to use if they're struggling with the cause? What workplace? What kind of language, or military might be? What kind of language are you going to hear? How do they word these things that you can begin to identify? Oh. Again, they pick one thing over here, single solution mindset, and believe that that is the only thing that will work to satisfy that need, whatever it is, there are 9 others to do that. How many different ways are there to help this child get what she or he needs from this science project? It could be recognition. It could be community. It's part of a team on that project. I don't know what that is. It could be attention they need. I don't know. But there's more than one way to meet that that does not include that orange. Questions about this? So, all right. But pragmatically speaking, I don't care what list you use. Anybody know Marshall Rosenthal? Yes. Rosenberg, that's it. Nonviolent communication.
I just went through a seminar last Friday on it.
Yes. He is the only other person I know out there that will do a needs-based assessment. But his is kind of, hit or miss. Ask enough questions, yeah. So I'm
Needs and feelings type.
yes. And the whole point is to create that empathy. And the empathy is the thing that moves. And what he's done is the fundamental need is connection, and the empathy creates the connection.
Yeah, he says you have to take somebody's need and bring it into a feeling.
Yes.
And then the feeling gets you to the empathy piece where you make the human connection.
Yeah. So that they feel, yeah, okay. I'm going to reverse it. I do it the other way around. But I have a great deal of respect because he's the only other person I know in all the research I've done that comes anywhere close to putting needs in the forefront.
I have 2 of his books if you want to look at.
Yeah. And he's got a list of needs.
Yeah.
So.
He's an interesting guy. I saw the video. He's very interesting to watch.
He is.
Group.
Yeah, I've got one of his videos too. What I struggle with is the way he gets to those needs is it's a glorified I statement. The feelings, what you've just described is this happened, I feel, I want. It's a I statement template on steroids.
That's right.
That's exactly what he's doing, and I find that very limiting. Again,
that was my comment. Is that it was very abstract. It did not allow for any resolution or any real problem solving in terms of addressing the rest of one's circumference of
Right.
the world, and therefore I didn't choose to go that route.
No, okay, very good. Here's what I want you to walk away with. There's always more than one way to meet the need if we can find out what the need is. The next presentation is to show you how to get to that need. Okay? Every conflict communication has a temporal orientation. There is a past, there is a present, there's a future. Only 2 of these are negotiable. Which 2 do you think they are? Wrong. Present and future. Nope. Past and present. Nope. Excellent.
Deduction, it only leads to past and future.
Excellent deductive skills. Yes, the only 2 that can be negotiated are the past and the future. Now, everybody in the room starts saying, well, wait a second, how do you negotiate the past? It's gone, it's done. But notice, the next time you're in a conflict, in fact, just a minute when we go to the exercise, I'm going to ask you to think back to the conflict you brought to the table with you today that you've been working on and comparing these things to. Everybody negotiates the past. They sit there and go, no, that's not what happened, or you didn't do what you were supposed to do. Yes, I did. You didn't say what you were supposed to say. Yes, I did. Notice the past tense verbs. Everybody tries to negotiate the past in order to change the past fact scenario. Everybody does that. It is amazing to me. And they will argue and argue and argue and argue, trying to craft the past in some way that they can both mutually understand. They end up stuck in the past. Negotiating the past always leads to defensiveness. Now, that only leaves negotiating the future. We're going to talk a lot about that in just a minute. But why can't we negotiate the present? Everybody wants some explanation for this. How deep you go is up to you. But how Why can't we negotiate the present? Here's one simple explanation. As soon as you start negotiating the present, it becomes the future, either one, right? It's impossible to know. Here's the way to understand this. I'll go a little bit deeper. The definition of present is the absence of the past and the future. In every present moment, you can't have the past, and in every present moment, you can't have the future. You can only have the present. Okay? Now, motivational speakers talk about it in terms of the power of now. Religiously and spiritually, people talk about the present as centeredness, where there's no past, there's no future, I'm centered. Now think about this. All fear, this is what the spiritual religious leaders will talk about, all fear is based in either the past, something that has happened, or the future, something that's going to happen. If we could genuinely sit in the present, it would literally be possible to be in a space absent of fear. No past, no future. That's what the religious traditions talk about being centered. Okay? So that's why we can't, as soon as you try to negotiate the present, you're either in the past or the future. So we can't negotiate it. All it is now. No, now. No, this now. Now, not that, this, see, can't. So, leads us to, if you negotiate the past, it always leads to defensiveness, and you end up stuck arguing over and over and over again. Therefore, we have conflict management secret number 4, all resolution to every single conflict. I don't care what it is, interpersonal, international. All resolution is future oriented. Your job as a conflict manager is to get to the future as soon as possible. Now, please do not hear that the past is irrelevant. That is not what I'm trying to say. I'm not trying to say, I'm trying to say don't negotiate the past. But it doesn't mean you don't need to explore the past. Remember, in this venting process we talked about, the past is very important to this person. Whatever emotional imbalance or intellectual imbalance they are in, it is as a result of their understanding of the past. I need you to let this out. And I need to create a healthy venting process with my communication skills. The only way I can do that is to explore the past. As soon as I start negotiating it with you, we're now in that understanding trap. I'm trying to change you rather than use this as a way to get me into the resolution room, cross that threshold. Make sense? Okay. So don't hear that the past is irrelevant. In fact, I made the mistake. When I first stumbled upon this idea, I'd be in an argument with Diane, and I'd be standing there knowing that, the future, it's about the future, I got to get into the future, okay? And she's talking and talking. I'm not listening to a word she says, right? I'm waiting for her to take a breath because I know I'm going to get into the future. Watch this, watch this. Sure enough, and one of the ways I can do this is a simple question. There are many ways to ask this question. One question. So here comes. She takes a breath. What is it you're asking me to do? Notice the future orientation of that, right? We're talking about the future. What is it you're asking me? It's an invitation to negotiate the future. To which point she looked at me and said, I shouldn't have to ask you to do anything. You should have done it right the first time. Guess who's still in the past? Yeah. I can't drag people into the future kicking and screaming, so I need some techniques to address that until she's ready to cross that threshold. That's the purpose of my communication skills. Keep that door open. Till eventually, and I can ask this question a number of different ways, but finally, what is it you're asking me to do? And now she answers it. I want you to play in traffic till you die. Now we're negotiating the future.
Not a good solution.
Well, no, know, but we're negotiating now, right? You know, what highway, what time of day, you know, the different things, right? Doesn't mean I have to agree, but we're at least negotiating. I can't even get that far. I got to get them into the future as quickly as possible. Which means, go ahead, explore the past. Don't negotiate it, but explore it. Next, identify their request. And upon the identification of their request, we can now discover the benefit. This is the transition into need exploration. I need you to get their request as quickly as possible. What is it you're asking me to do? If you could have anything in the world and you knew I would say yes, what would you ask for? What is it, cable guy, you want me to do? Pull the cable out from under the baseboard. That's an earlier illustration we had, right? Okay. What is it? What do you want? Tell me what it is you're asking for. What do you want from me? Any way you ask that question, you get the request. Don't do the request. That's not the purpose. Get the request. What is it you're asking me to do? As soon as I find out she wants me to play in traffic till I die, now I can do need exploration. Whatever that request is. What is it you want? I want the orange. Now I can do need exploration. I want $10,000 for pain and suffering. Now I can do need exploration. It all pivots on the request. What is it you want from me? What is it you're asking for? Once I get that, I can now discover the benefit. Now, let me draw back to something we talked about in that first module. Remember the identify the positive request? As soon as I figure out God, is it hot in here? Ah, so you would like the temperature changed. Yes, I would. Now I can do need exploration. It's one more way to get the request. I can simply ask, and in all honesty, people are going to be very willing to tell you what it is they want from you. That's why we're in this. Notice, everybody comes to a conflict with a solution in mind. That's a barrier to resolution because you both said no. That's not what I'm interested in. What I'm interested in is getting the request. What is it you want? I want him to blank. I now have the request. I can do need exploration. Here's the mistake everybody makes because they don't do need exploration. What is it you want here today? I want $10,000. No, I want that promotion. I should have gotten it the first time. Well, are you willing to give him the promotion? No, I told him no a long time ago. He's just, barking up the wrong tree. All I've done is brought right back into their single solution mindset. I already know the answer is no. Now I have to. You want that promotion. I wonder what the need is. That promotion has now become the orange. It's not the orange you want. It's not the promotion you want. It's what that promotion will do for you. That promotion meets some need. I don't know what it is, and I'll bet dollars to donuts you couldn't tell me what it is. But with carefully placed questions, together we can discover the benefit that promotion does for you. And I can find 9 other ways to get that for you. That's where we're doing. That's where we're going to go next. How do I get from the request to the need? So here's a quick summary. Don't get stuck and mired in facts. Facts belong in a courtroom where someone has to make a judgment on behalf of these two people's future. You don't have to do that. That is not your job. Don't be surprised about when people drop into rigidity, single solution mindset, and they drop into persuasion skills. Everybody does that. They don't know how to negotiate. Don't be surprised. Don't argue past fact scenarios. Well, is that really what happened? Are you sure you understood completely? Could it be possible that me trying to get this person to see it from their point of view is not helpful? Takes an awful lot of energy to do that. I can do this much more quickly. and get the request ASAP, as soon as possible. Everything rests on that request. Get it as quick as you can. Questions, thoughts, concerns, frustrations. Look, more credits. Dun, dun, dun.
How many books have you written?
2. Well, actually, it's the one. It's the exact same book. Like I said, the illustrations have changed. That's all.
I just saw one that was about the benefits.
Oh, those are articles. 2 articles published in Mediate.com, Discovering Benefits, Mediate.com in 2004, well, both of them, and a Benefit Resolution Mindset, which is available in an ebook. Or you can get them off of Mediate.com, 2004. Okay.
I like this piece a lot.
The conflict communication piece? Why?
This whole module. Why? It just does something to my soul. It's practical, and yet it also is a great combination between, I think, intellectual and the emotional piece. It wraps them together very nicely.
Mm. Okay.
You know, when it gets a little too woo-woo-wooey, we've got, the intellectual piece to come back to it. When it gets a little too intellectual, straightforward, you've got the other piece.
Yeah, one thing I am constantly trying to tell people, because when I find out what I do, oh, you're a mediator. I don't do touchy-feely. People hear, oh, you just, try to get people to Sonny Perdue publicly was asked about the water wars. And somebody asked him in front of a camera, why don't you try mediation? And this was his public response. Oh, we're way past the kumbaya stage. That's what you think I do? I don't do touchy-feely. And sometimes I get managers going, I don't have time for this, figure out what their need is, all that touchy-feely. This is not touchy-feely. That's not.
Do what I say.
This is what instead, just do.
Possibilities.
We're not talking that way. I don't do that. I don't do therapy either, so I'm very clear about where these lines are. I have plenty of referral sources I can cite. I don't do therapy. Oh, fairly legal? I'll have to turn the camera off because I could get sued for libel. Yeah, oh my God. Shoo! All right, let me find Bernard. We'll shut it off, take a break, and if you want, we can talk about this. Do you see yourself doing this with your own style?
Oh, I like your style.
I'll be right back. Any other thoughts, concerns about that module?
It's a good, excellent module.
Excellent. Yes, we do. And yeah, really what's going to be, you'll just intersperse your stories. The things that you want to emphasize. You may spend more time on the emotional, the imbalanced personal state. You may spend more story time on something else. And the reason you are here is you demonstrated an ability to create that engagement between the material and the audience and interject humor at the same time. So those are the things that I don't have time. Maybe somewhere along the way when we're doing really well, I can take folks on and train them how to do that.
Yeah.
But right now, I don't want to train people to do that. We can give you the content. You already do it. So I think this will be very quick. Get you up to. I actually did this for the Justice Center when I was their trainer. Created the consultant model, and we brought several people up to speed. It's 3 days worth of training. It's like 20 different modules. And we had them going through this matrix of, all right, here's the easiest ones to learn. You go with us on training, and you see us do it again, so you're constantly hearing the ones you're still preparing for. And then we get you up there to do the easy ones, and there you are. You're up to level 1. By the time you got to the 3rd day, you could do all 3 days of training. We could cut you loose on your own. So I'm doing the same model. All right. All right, let's talk about need exploration. I'm thinking we'll be out of here in about an hour. Again, we're not doing any of the exercises. That's not going to be hard to walk you through those exercises at all. And we can do that without videotape, really, although we probably will videotape. So let's talk about need exploration. Here's what we're doing. When it comes to need exploration, we're going to talk about leverage. Everybody's looking for leverage in any kind of a conflict. Now, why do they want leverage? Why do you think people are looking for leverage? Advance their position. And if I can advance my position and get you to do what I want you to, right? I'm looking for some sort, yeah. So what are they going to use to convince you to do what I want? First thing, everybody thinks truth's a leverage. If I can just get the truth, right? Now we're back to that mutual understanding problem, and now I'm trying to browbeat you to see the truth. That doesn't work. The other thing folks think works as leverage is threat, punish, shame, and guilt. Now, the reason they think it works is in some cases it does. You know, there's those, we've all done something for someone else out of guilt, right? So now here we're thinking, well, you should do this out of guilt. So the reason they're looking for it has 3 possibilities. I either want this person to do something for me, or to not do something that they're planning to do, or to get them to stop doing something. Those are the 3 possibilities. And I need leverage because the only reason I need leverage is you've told me no. If you told me yes, we wouldn't even be in a conflict. But you told me no. So here we go. So let's talk about getting that leverage. I'll show you how to do that right now. How to get that leverage. How to get somebody to do something you want them to do when at first they don't want to do it. Now there's a whole sales pitch right there, right? I can show you all how to get somebody to do something you want them to do even though they said they wouldn't. Here's how we're going to do that. The reason for getting, there's a clear benefit to the person with leverage if the other person does one of those 3 things. If that person does something for them, there's a clear benefit. There's also a clear benefit if they don't do something. Please don't call my boss, or please don't tell my wife, right? There's a clear benefit. There's also a clear benefit in that other person stopping doing something. Our job is to find that benefit. Let's talk about that. Yes, where's that benefit and where's it coming from? One characteristic of every request, now we're back to the criticism. Every request, inside every criticism is a positive request. Inside every request is a benefit. Now, I'm not saying it's an obvious benefit. If it wasn't obvious, we wouldn't have to discover it, but we do. We have to discover it. So there is an implied benefit inside every request. I want you to give me that promotion. Well, what is that benefit of that promotion to you? Well, I deserve it. That's not what I asked. See? Every don't implies a do. Every don't want implies a do want. I don't want something to happen. Well, then what do you want to happen? And I can explore this by taking the language they give me and do the reflection back of it, the negative reflection back. If they're asking do or don't, I can ask for the do. If they're asking for the don't want, I can ask for the do want. And here's how we're going to do this. I'm going to give you 3 questions to ask them to start to get a picture of what it is they're benefiting. How are they benefiting? First question we've already got, standard. What do you want? See, we got to figure out a way to get that request. As soon as I get the request, here's the first thing I want you to ask them. Why do you want that? I want that promotion. Why do you want that? There are 2 why questions in the English language. 2 different types of why questions. The first why question is defend for me your reasons for asking for this. Okay, that's the first why question. Everybody on the planet tends to answer that why question. When I say, why do you want that, they'll defend it. Well, because I deserve it. I'm much more qualified. I should have gotten it to begin with. Because it's fair. Those are all reasons why. That is not the question I'm asking. The second why question. For what purpose? To what end are you asking for this thing? I want that promotion. To what end are you asking for that promotion? I do not want to be deployed. To what end are you asking to stay here? For what purpose are you asking for that thing? Now remember, they're going to answer the first one. You have to ignore that answer. You have to ask it again. A different way if you have to. You don't always have to use why. You could actually ask, well, for what purpose are you asking for that thing? Now they tell you what that thing is. Well, if I get that promotion, I'm going to have more responsibility. Ah, you're interested in more responsibility. That's the benefit. Let me ask, how does getting more responsibility help you? See what I've done? I got request. I found out what it does. What is that about for you? Okay. Take the answer to this question, plug it into this one. How does getting your request, how does getting more responsibility help you? And then I can go and ask, what does getting more responsibility do for you? These are almost the same question. Okay? In terms of responsibility, how is that going to affect your life? There's another way. Basically what we're looking at here with these 2 questions is the impact. What impact is more responsibility going to have in your life? Tell me how your life in the future is going to look differently than it does now with more responsibility. What is that going to do for you? Ah, what is your life going to look like in the future if you don't get more responsibility in your life? What's going to be missing for you if you never get that? That starts to point to the answers you're going to get will start to give you clues. What's my life, the impact? How is that responsibility going to help you? How is getting responsibility going to do for you? What impact is it going to have on your life? The answers are going to start to ring in one of these 4 categories. Or really any of the categories you've picked on Maslow as well, if you pick that list. If I don't have more responsibility, then I'm going to be stuck in the career path. I'm supposed to be, in a much different place on my career path than I am right now. And if I'm going to end up in retirement and, my life is just going to be boring if I'm doing the same old thing that I'm doing right now. And I'm going to be stuck. So you don't want to be stuck. What does not being stuck look like? How's that going to, well, I'm going to be important. I'm going to be valued. I'm going to have a place. Oh, so it's important to be recognized in you're not just a cog in a system. Yeah. So if we could figure out a way for you to be valued, if we could figure out a way for you to have enough challenge that represents more responsibility for you, then there would be purpose in this job or this career path. Yes, but that purpose has to lead up to that next career. Okay, well, what does that next career thing look like? If we could get you the things you needed in order to have that next career path, would you take it? Let's see, that's where we're headed. Now let me cut to the chase right now. The big picture. Here's what I have found over the years. Everybody will sacrifice their request. What they came into the room with. Tell me what it is you want. I want that promotion. I want that orange, O-R-A-N-G-E. They will sacrifice whatever that orange is, that thing that they came in, that single solution mindset. They will give that up if for a heartbeat they believe their need will be met. So here's a nice test case scenario. If I could figure out a way to get you recognition, value, connect, whatever it is that I figured out their need is, would you give up that promotion to that job? If I have genuinely found the need, the answer to that question every time is yes. The only reason I ever get a no is because I did not find the need. Now, there's a couple of reasons why I might not find the need. A, there are some people that for the life of them, no matter how many questions you ask, cannot find it. They cannot find that. They've never had these questions asked. They don't know how to do need exploration for themselves. In fact, if they get kind of close, it starts to get scary. Well, okay, we're not going to be able to do it.
Probably had a few when that need wasn't in the room.
Ah, say more, yes.
Mama was sitting at the house.
Yeah.
And hubby was there negotiating something that mommy needed.
Yes. Definitely.
And it didn't, and the needs didn't
Nope.
jive.
No, yeah, and I can't get from him the need that's really going to result. Yeah, no, absolutely. Yes. He's sitting here fighting for principle or something else. He's,
He's outside the door. He's got to go out there and get
right.
permission.
So it's his need that he's negotiating, trying to get met, not hers.
I need her in that room. If she's got, yeah, if she's that pivot point, I got to have them both in that room at some point in time. Which brings also the point, most of the time you're going to be doing this need exploration in private with someone. Yeah, because if I try to do need exploration on you, the answers to these questions about your basic, very vulnerable. Very vulnerable. We're going to talk a little bit more about what that vulnerability creates and how that creates a wall sometimes and how to get around that wall. Okay? So that's the big picture. We're trying to get the need. If we find it, one of those options, they will willingly sacrifice what they were demanding, what their request was for. So here we go. I've asked these three questions. Why do you want it? More responsibility. How is more responsibility going to help you, and what's it going to do for you? There are many types of needs. And this is where I'm back to whatever list works for you the best, go ahead and utilize it. There's nothing sacred about the four that I'm playing with now in my intellectual playground. I'm just having fun with those. Mike likes them a lot. He sees a resonance with those, I think, with community and other from his military background. Cause is a military connection. That you're connected to a cause. The protection of the United States of America is a cause.
I think it resonates a great deal for me because of my corporate work.
Ah.
And what I see in corporate, I've done a lot of work with Pfizer and pharmaceuticals, is that, their causes, and CDC, the causes are to eradicate disease, to create a pill for it, or to create the research that blah, 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 blah. So their cause is really community-based. It's also profit-based.
Yes.
But the world community for them is that world they're in.
Yes.
Culture they're in.
And if you're not careful, I can get so wrapped up in that cause that especially in the West, we have a tendency to substitute causes or misinterpret them as communities.
Yeah.
And here's how I best understand. I struggle with this too. Here's what a community does that a cause can't. Okay, not really. You can't birth yourself, and you can't bury yourself. The community. You're born into community. Okay. So whatever that is, sometimes it's ethnic, sometimes it's geographical, but those are the folks that brought you into this world. And it's typically those folks that will bury you.
Do you want to go one step further, or you don't want to take time right now?
Go ahead.
For me, my life in my community
Mm-hmm.
is part of my culture and my religion.
Mm-hmm.
And also it is the cause that I have spent 46 years working on around education and building communities that are self-sufficient because of skills and education provided. I raise funds for this organization. That cause is very much tied to the community and the value system that I've been brought up in.
Yeah, there are a lot
So
of causes.
can't separate it.
You need both.
Yeah.
And I believe in your case, you're talking about Jewish community. Yes, there's a very strong manifestation, particularly the more conservative or orthodox you become, the more obvious that community is. And out of that, there's a whole bunch of humanitarian causes that you do for whatever reason, guilt, shame, or survival.
That's the driving
Yeah, keeping this community alive, right? Because
we're the only ones that don't kill us.
survive. Yes, the purpose of community. Watch this. The purpose of community is to ensure the survival of its members. If the community succeeds in that purpose, the community will survive. So it becomes that reciprocal. What becomes dangerous is when here's what I hear the misuse of community. Well, I'm part of the martial arts community. No, you aren't. Martial arts is not a community. It is a group of like-minded people. They get together because they like that thing. That's a cause. Democrat is a cause. Republican is a cause. Christianity is a cause. Okay?
You don't see that as a community.
No. It's an ideology. Judaism has a religious component. It's a community.
It's an ethnic.
It's a group. And the laws are community laws. Christianity has beliefs that guides our principles that we intellectually attach ourselves to. It's a cause. I'm going to delete all this because there's so many different ways I can get in trouble from that. What ends up dangerous is if I make that cause my community. And I personally know people that have sacrificed their family and their community for that cause. And now we're into Kool-Aid,
I was just going to say, drink the Kool-Aid.
yeah, kinds of stuff. So insidiously too far, we're talking those kinds of things. We in the West are very susceptible to this because a lot of times, particularly a majority culture, have lost this. When an oppressed group, right? I mean, in the 60s, I'm doing contemporary society at Keller right now, teaching humanities class, and we're doing civil rights tonight. When you get a minority group that's oppressed by the majority, that creates community, right? It creates that bond. When you're the majority, and that's abuse of power. That's not community. And suddenly the white cause, this can become very confusing. I think we're very tempted to, it's very easy to get caught up in a cause and call it a community the way we do our language. The last part. Yes, yes. And a lot of the decisions we make about what we need to be doing yeah.
Why do you feel the need to attack us?
Yes. In those cultures where, you know, the halakha is religious and it's a theocracy-based, then the difference between which Christianity doesn't do very well, then yeah, we're talking the community has religious rules for guiding it, as opposed to the cause is going to impose, the moral majority is going to impose, or the Tea Party is going to impose our, oh my God, I'm getting deeper and deeper. Is that, yeah, that's, again, this is my intellectual playground right now. I'm having a lot of fun thinking about what happens when these things go awry. It's just this, the best illustration I can think of in, for me as a white Western male that resonates for me is Fiddler on the Roof. Tevye, you know, I mean, and that, the community is, I can't survive without the butcher. And the butcher can't survive without me, right? We are so far away from that, right? I go down to the grocery store and buy a can of anything I don't need, you know, we've severed ourselves.
If you lived in a tight Jewish community, you
Uh-huh.
feel it because my grandmother and my parents were born in Tevye's world.
Oh,
They were born in the pogroms in Russia and came here in the early 1900s. I'm first generation American.
wow.
So when I tell you the stories I heard growing up and my grandmother trying to share with me the stories, as you must have in your culture too, the community today, the Jewish community today, really, really still tries to keep that sense of the needs that we have for each other in terms of not just don't just buy from Jews, but always support one another
Yes.
in any way we can.
Right.
As far emotionally or logistically or whatever. But I think that's not so far from us. That story of Fiddler on the Roof, parts of it I've lived with my parents and
Yeah.
grandparents. So I think that the connections, if you're going to do research on this, between community and cause
Uh-huh.
will vary, I think, based on different groups. And the oppression, we have the Holocaust and always being slaughtered.
Oh, definitely.
We have an expression, they tried to kill us, we won, let's eat. Every holiday is all about, they tried to kill us, we won, let's sit down and eat now.
Uh-huh.
Everything is kind of a joke because we're always celebrating something that tried to kill the Jews, right?
Right.
And for you, it's also, the survival. And you're so close to the civil rights and to the slavery piece.
And stories, I'm sure,
And
from
stories.
parents. And,
We still feel that connection.
yeah. Oh, yeah.
So I don't know if that would vary from community or the white Christian may not have. They have no real European connection in the same way or oppression in the way. Some of them might. I don't, some
Yeah.
others do.
Yeah.
But different from the black community and the Jewish community.
Yeah. There isn't a place in my life where I could identify that I literally needed that other context, person, group to survive. Not as a white Western American male. So the closest I come, where I join a church, and that church starts to fill in some of those needs. But if I'm not careful, I will make that cause my community. And if that community's cause starts asking of me certain things that a community I'm supposed to, then I end up joining a gang. I end up being a skinhead. I end up being KKK. I end up being, yeah.
Because they perceive themselves being threatened.
Right. So, we need to, yeah. It's muddled for me because I don't have a strong experience of this.
Well, do some focus groups with different groups.
That would be
Get
fascinating.
a sense of it.
Yes.
Maybe that'll give connection.
Oh, that'd be fantastic. Yeah. Okay. Sorry. Anyways, there's a whole bunch of needs. It's benefits, psychological benefits, physical, emotional, financial, social, or you're in a really complicated case and it's all of the above, where you've got several things going on here and you're going to have to parse them out, separate them, and find options for each need, not just one option that will meet all the needs. Don't do that.
So that's not on this
No, and you'll eventually get this, all these slides. You will get all of these at some point. Okay? So your job in getting that future is to look for the impact. Find out how is your life going to be different? What is it going to look like? And I can do this positively or negatively. What is it going to look like if you get it? What is it going to look like if you don't get it? Now, as they start to answer these questions, notice I'm in the future with them. We're not arguing what happened in the past. Did they do the right thing? Was justice done? No, we're talking about what the future needs to look like. How is your life going to be lessened if you don't get that more responsibility? Notice we're not talking promotion anymore. How is your life going to look different if you get recognition? How is your life going to be bereft if you don't get recognition? Now, the right answer to this question, you never do this in real life. But the right answer to the question, if you push this long enough, if you don't have connection to other, you're going to die. If you don't have connection to self, you're going to die. You don't have connection to a cause, something bigger than you, a purpose in life, you're going to die. If you don't have connection to community, we're talking basic human. We're not talking about luxuries. We're not talking about wants. We're not talking about, I might could live without it. The real answer to these questions, if you push them all the way, if I don't get that orange, what's that orange going to do for you? Well, it's going to meet my hunger need. Well, what's going to happen in your life if your hunger need's is not ever met? I'm going to die.
Are you talking about spiritually?
Yes, we could talk about that as well. Psychologically, emotionally. But even at that point, that's one step before, if that isn't addressed, physical death's next. We're literally talking life and death here. In some cases, that's overly melodramatic. But in this person who's entered this conflict, it's not all that melodramatic. And I'll show you why in just a minute. Okay?
Excuse me, I'm sorry, Rick. I think it's really a total connection to if we're doing military.
Yes.
If it's not met and they're in that much pain or need, to belong back into their home.
Yes.
Their family unit.
Yes.
Back to their community outside the army or the military community. I think that loss of all those connections is why there is suicide.
Suicide, exactly. And these folks come back with a bond that is tighter. Now, they'll use the word community. I think we misuse that word too much. It has too broad of an application, martial arts community. Right? But they have created a bond with this cause, with these people, that's often stronger than their bond with their family that they married into, their children, their wife. It's often stronger than that. And the research I've done, it is against species. Species do not kill each other. In the whole food chain thing, right? You kill for food, you kill another species. So to train a human being to kill another human being is a great deal of work. And one of the ways to do that is to create this bond. These guys are literally giving their lives, risking their lives for each other. And when Mike talks about doing this, I don't know if he's told you this or you've heard him say this. The reason he's doing this is he feels he's left his guys behind. He's abandoned them. And he wants to show he still cares. He wants to give them something that will help them. That's how tight this bond is. Yeah. So yeah, you're right. This connection. And then to leave that and to come back here and nobody understands and I can't get back into society and I'm confused about this and this is really shaky. I don't even know what this means anymore. Right? Where do you go?
God, that makes a lot of sense.
Yeah. Focus on the future. If you're going to look for this impact, you got to keep them focused on the future. They're going to try to go back to the past and give their past fact scenario as for the reason why I have to have this. Don't hold on to that. Let it go. Let it fall off your back like water on a duck. Just don't go there. If you get stuck on one of those things and then start pursuing it, it's what I call misdirection. They'll drop back into values. Well, the really most important thing here is the team. And it's really going to help the team if I get that promotion, right? And they're finding reasons why, and it's a value structure, and it's misdirection. Your job is to focus on the future. Here's how misdirection works and why it works. I need you to be aware of it and expect it. When you ask these questions, you are going to get bad answers. They are not going to tell you, A, the truth. They're not going to, because they don't know how to get down there. And the truth is way too scary, because what we're talking about is basic human needs. Why am I going to reveal that to you? So here's what happens. People will substitute the thing that sounds less selfish. They'll actually substitute the greater noble sounding thing. So, for example, if I did divorce coaching for this woman who was going into mediation for divorce, right? And she hired me to coach her, to prep her for that mediation and to do need exploration and create some negotiation strategies for her. The conflict she was having with her husband was over the house. He wanted it, she wanted it. Single solution mindset. I want it, no. You want it, no. That's the characteristic of a single solution. Yes or no. Anytime you're in a yes or no choice, you're in a single solution mindset. You have not found the need. So I did need exploration on her. We're asking, what are the benefits? How's this going to impact you? What's going to happen? It came down to convenience, but her first answer to the question, what does this do for you? Well, you know, the divorce is really hard on the kids, and the house represents a kind of continuity for them, that they'll have some sort of safe space. And in the back of my mind, I'm thinking, bullshit, right? What has she done? She's created misdirection for me. Misdirection because she's talking about everything except herself. Basic human needs are about that person. She threw the kids at me. Now, if I would have gone in there and said, all right, let's figure out a way to help the kids adjust psychologically, I'd have been way off course. Instead, I have to turn it around and look at her and go, let's say your kids fail in adjusting through this psychologically, and fall apart and grow up and become serial killers. What impact is that going to have on you? Whatever it is they give me will have an impact on them if not addressed well. What if your kids go through this beautifully, smelling like a rose, the most well-adjusted children that have ever been through a divorce? They both win the Nobel Peace Prize. What is that going to do for you? I've got to not fall into the misdirection. I've got to keep her focused on the future. I got to keep her focused on her. Why does she give me the children? Because to sit there and talk about herself and to talk about the benefit to her sounds incredibly selfish. Now, if she has to stand in front of a judge and the judge says, why should I give you the house? And she stands up there and starts giving all of these selfish reasons, she's afraid she's going to lose. And she probably would in front of a judge. Why? Because a judge has to make a judgment based upon facts. We don't do that here. But she's not used to what we do here. She's used to watching television and being bombarded with judgment. So she throws me the kids. No, no, no. This is about us being selfish. This is about us changing the negative connotation to the word selfish. This is about looking at your basic human needs, about your survival, about getting what is going to be best for you. And one way to look at this is, if we take care of mom, those kids will be okay. It's the old airline safety announcement. No. Yeah. When the oxygen gets sucked out of the air, put the mask on yourself first. Because if you don't, you're going to be useless to anybody else. That's what we're talking about. Watch for this. They're going to turn it to the team. They're going to turn it to the unit or the company or the squad. They're going to turn it to some noble, glorified value in the community. No. What does that do for you? Once we start doing this, you're going to see a very small list of things. A lot of time, well, for her, it's her image of herself as a mother. Or if you're not careful, there's nothing wrong with this, but her image of her mother, of her. The image of me in my community. I'm going to look like I don't want that. I did this the other day with, it was an exercise we were doing, and the gentleman came to the need with his divorce situation that I'm going to look like a failure as a father to my kids or to my community or to myself. And it basically was to himself. If I don't get to, and here's what the argument was, I need to have the kids every other weekend. Or I need to have the kids every weekend, about that. Well, why? Well, the kids need me. No. If the kids don't get you, what impact is that going to have on you? I'm going to be a loser. I'm going to see myself as a loser. I can't live with that. I can't live with that image of myself. I can't live with other people seeing me that way. That can't be true. I will do anything I have to do to make sure that's not true. Hence, I'm in this conflict. So let's talk about, we're going to get to the heart of comment.
Rick, can that be okay if people are honest and introspective enough to say, my image of myself as a parent is important to me in providing a nice home in a neighborhood where the kids can go up to school because I can't afford private school or whatever is important. I mean, is that, if they can speak from an I perspective, that's okay within the country?
It's paramount.
Okay.
That's the goal. That's the piece de resistance. I mean, that's what we're headed for. That's what I want. They're very reticent to do it, but that's what.
But it's really what they're saying when they say, I want to provide for my children's stability.
Yes.
I see myself as the protector of my family. It's just a different way of saying the I instead of them.
Right.
Okay.
This is about me. There's nothing wrong with that. And I got to have this or I'm going to die. There's nothing wrong with that. We just don't talk about that. We don't talk like that. We don't reward people for being that introspective and that honest with
I
themselves.
think the statement, gee, this isn't about you, Rick.
Ah,
has become
yes.
Such a statement in the society. Like that's a terrible thing that I should say, I need you to be quiet. I need 5 minutes apiece.
Yes.
Stop talking. It's like, well, you're selfish. Well, it's a need that I have in order to re-energize.
Yes. All basic human needs are selfish. There's no way around that.
That's okay to some degree.
Yeah,
now.
yeah. Especially alone. I was doing this for U.S. Customs Service. Now, think about this. I did this with 4 different cities, 3 months in 2010. And literally, there are people in the audience with their weapon